Welcome back to Unrendered. I am Tony Regisford, and my guests are Dr. Marlene Atz and Mr. Nigel Bradshaw. When we went on the break, Nigel, I'm going to pick you up here. We're talking about who is UWI competing with? Who are you competing with for students who are about to do this tertiary education bit? They're shopping around, obviously, because they're looking at their options. What's your main competition?
I want to try to answer that question from a different perspective. We competing against not any specific group of universities or anything like that. We're competing against our own perceptions of what the quality of the University of the West Indies can be based on the fact that its Caribbean heritage. Everyone that we compete against, students will form a perception, prospective students will form a perception about what is said about the University of the West Indies, and that is a strong point too. Word of mouth is the strongest channel in terms of how we are able to develop any messages about ourselves, how the messages are transferred. In particular, you might find students accessing wherever they get financing arrangements from as well.
Yes.
Right? Previously, it always used to be North America and sometimes to United Kingdom, in particular in Europe. But now you find that the Chinese have deep pockets to be able to offer large amounts of scholarships. Cuba always was able to facilitate arrangements for studies, let's say in medicine and that kind of stuff throughout the region.
Yes.
And India as well. Right? You're going to see sooner or later Brazil doing the same type of thing, especially in cultural studies.
Yes.
Right? It's something that we're not going to be able to compete with. But this is engendering our purpose here today. Right? And throughout the week, we're here to be able to talk specifically about what persons may want for themselves that the University of West Indies can give them that will allow them to look at us more deeply as an option for their own further development.
I want to just expand, and before you come in, Manny, I want to expand on the thing that you brought up about students' perception and the quality of the qualification that they end up with from the University of the West Indies. It's a point that has been spoken on a lot by some of these, I don't want to use his name too much, but George Lamin was somebody who recently visited here, and I actually had the opportunity of interviewing him. He lectured at our independence lecture, and he was at pains to point out that this whole notion of the classical Oxford or Cambridge, the universities out of the UK, we are still, as a society, very caught up in believing that unless, that's the ultimate level, in other words, So UWI, things like the UWI, secondary to a university education at Oxford or Cambridge, Bradford, etc. How much of that, in your experience, is presenting a challenge to you? If you want to pick it up, Dr. Atz.
I was smiling because I want to pick it up directly, but I also want to pick it up indirectly. And let me start with the indirect. And I want to point to Nobel laureate Sir Arthur Lewis, who everyone knows is from St. Lucia, was from St. Lucia. Arthur Lewis, of course, left the region. He became an eminent economist studying out of London, all right? But one of the things that made Arthur Lewis famous was the fact that he could speak to the Caribbean reality. So that was his market niche. He knew the region that he came from, and he knew how to position himself to capitalize on that knowledge, to influence policy in the metropole. And that is what the UWI brings to this region and to the world. Because if we're talking about a globalized environment, we can't think about competing in a globalized environment unless we understand the realities that we face. And UWI has 64 years of mastering that art. We understand the region, we understand what are our weaknesses, we understand what are our strengths. We will be the first to tell you that we have weaknesses and we have some challenges, but we also understand in a very clear and unambiguous way who we are, and that is what we bring to the table. Studying at Oxford, studying at Cambridge, I have the greatest amount of respect for those institutions. institutions, studying at the Harvards, I have the greatest amount of respect. But it will not afford someone who is interested in this region and interested in developing this region the kind of environment, the kind of scholarly activity that a UWI experience will afford you. And again, I smiled when you asked the question. That is what Arthur Lewis brought. He brought to the Cambridges and to the London School of Economics of this world. He was an eminent scholar. You don't win the Nobel Peace Prize in economics by being a shoddy economist, but he brought to the table the whole question of Caribbean needs and Caribbean development, and his seminal piece on the industrialization of the British West Indies is still something that we draw very heavily on, trying to understand the process of industrialization that we should follow as we seek to achieve economic development in our countries. Is a challenge that we've been facing for the last 50 years, and we continue to face it. And that is what the UWI brings. We are not perfect. I'll be the first person to tell you that. But we do have strengths, and that is one of the richest parts of our heritage, the fact that we understand Caribbean people. And we do our best to speak to the needs of Caribbean people and to let Caribbean people know that we're on their side in terms of this process going forward.
Yes. Interesting. Just sticking with the point a little bit in terms of how you're perceived versus how the Harvards and so on are perceived. And I'll stick with Lamin for a bit because in his lecture he was actually saying that one of the reasons why the Federation failed was because the three drivers behind the Federation were all eminent men but educated at an institution which was very colonial in its origin. And he was talking about Oxford, and he was talking about Adams and Manley and Williams, right? And all three men received the high accolades of an Oxford education, but it may have undermined the essence of the Caribbeanness that was required to sort of knit all this thing together. And
I think that might have been understandable at that point in time, because that was
we have to relate it to the era.
That is what the plantation legacy that we inherited. I mean, to use the words of Lloyd Bess and Carrie Levitt, that is what our plantation legacy was all about. The fact that we were just coming into independence, so to speak, and we were still trying to grapple with what was appropriate. So what we had, the only experience that we had up until that point in time was the historical experience of being tied to the metropole and, policy directives and economic development policy being driven by what the metropole was saying. So I think it is understandable at that point in time. But Williams also made the point in our famous statement, infamous, that 1 from 10 leaves zero. And I think that really was the starting point of what we are seeing today and what we continue to grapple with, this whole question of regionalism and coming together to craft our own destiny, not discarding the historical experience, but using it as a springboard, so to speak, to propel our economies forward. So I think in terms of the criticisms that are real, that are leveled against us, I think sometimes it's really a question of perception, but I think it's also a question of what people want of the UWI, and I agree that as a regional institution we're meant to serve all of the several million people of the Caribbean region, and I'm using the Caribbean in the broadest sense, and maybe we're not always equal to the task, but it is a work in progress, and I think we have made some significant strides over the years.
But let's go in real terms now and move from the perception a little bit. In real terms, you offer different, postgrad and undergraduate degrees, and people may take those outside of the Caribbean to seek employment. What has the feedback been? Is your degree something that people can hold up anywhere they travel, basically? Is that the general feedback? I mean, I just want to assure the students that are listening to this program, I'm doing that for this reason,
certainly,
to give that assurance. So, let me hear it from you.
It is a degree that you can take as a passport to any part of the world. I have colleagues, I myself have experienced that I left UWI with a certain level of certification, and I was given exemptions from courses because I was considered more than qualified based on my UWI qualifications. We're internationally accredited, And there has been the experience. I don't know if Nigel has some more empirics to add to that.
Yes. One of the things for sure is if we at the St. Augustine campus alone, and also to the Cavell campus and the Mona campus, our exchange programs at both the student levels and academic staff levels have ensured that we have been able to grow our experiences into globalized niches, and to ensure too that we have been leaving our print behind in a number of different institutions across the world, every continent.
In fact, something Nigel said that just triggered a thought in my mind. We have students who, every semester we have students who decide that they want to come to the UWI to do a semester with us because they recognize that we have something that will enhance their learning skills. And these are not persons from the Caribbean living in the diaspora. These are persons from the United States. We have Nigerian students now in our master's programs who decide that they want to come to the UWI based only on what they see online and maybe the research output that they see from some of the academics at the University of the West Indies. And they decide to make the trip to come down to this part of the world to be part of our community and to learn what we have to offer. And I think that, that in itself...
that in itself is endorsement of you doing something very right. Yeah. Let's switch the conversation now to gender. And I know that you, in your research area, you are looking at gender in relation to economics and risk management, disaster risk management. I want to broaden the gender discussion anyway. I want to pick you up on that, but I also want to broaden it, Nigel, to your intake to university and your output. Who's graduating? What are those demographics like, and what are the ratios, male to females, and sort of examine, what we're seeing and why we're observing what we're observing. Definitely. But we're at the end of the section, so when we come back, we'll pick it up in our final section.
No problem.
This is Unrendered. When we come back, we'll be in our final segment.